Good morning, CWA family, and welcome to CWA Hour of Power. I'm David Marshall, and for the next few weeks, I'll have the privilege of serving as your lead host while our brother Errol Minor takes a well-deserved break. Now, one thing I've learned throughout my life is that change doesn't happen because people wish for it. Change happens because ordinary people decide to get involved. And that's what this show is all about. We talk about labor. We talk about civil rights. We talk about voting rights. We talk about justice. But most importantly, we talk about people because behind every issue is a family. Behind every policy is a worker. And behind every movement are people who decided silence was not an option. So thank you for joining us today, and let's have an honest conversation. This is CWA Hour of Power. The Communication Workers of America invite you to the 2026 National Human Rights Conference happening August 16th through the 19th in Atlanta, Georgia. Join union leaders and activists from across the country as we come together to build power, advance justice, and fight for workers' rights. This year's conference will be held at the beautiful Westin Peachtree Plaza, located in the heart of downtown Atlanta, Georgia. To register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Don't miss this opportunity to connect, learn, organize for a stronger, more just future. We'll see you in Atlanta. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and press the Listen Live option. Tune in live every Thursday, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. And before we get started today, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the tragic death of Nolan Xavier Wells, an 18-year-old young man from Mississippi whose life ended far too soon. To Nolan's parents, family, teammates, friends, and everyone who loved him, we extend our deepest condolences and prayers. You know, no parent should ever have to bury a child, and no family should have to endure uncertainty that comes with unanswered questions. Like many of you, we've seen the videos, we've read the headlines, we've heard the rumors circulating on social media, but here at CWA Hour Power, we believe in something that is increasingly rare, allowing facts, not speculation, to guide the conversation. As of today, the investigation remains ongoing. Authorities have not announced the cause of death or say they have evidence that a crime occurred, and Nolan's family has asked for transparency as we stand with every family seeking honest answers through a thorough investigation. What we do know is that this is a young man that left home and never returned, and the truth alone is heartbreaking. We know too many families in America have experienced the pain of waiting for answers. Regardless of race, background, or where someone lives, every family deserves dignity, respect, transparency, and a complete investigation when tragedy strikes. And here's what we believe. You know, all children deserve to make it home. They deserve the opportunity to grow into grown-ups, pursue their dreams, love their families, and live long, full lives. Every child deserves that opportunity. So today, as we move into our program, we simply ask our listeners to keep Nolan's family in your prayers. Pray for wisdom for the investigators. Pray for the truth, whatever it may be, is discovered, and pray for healing for communities that's grieving the loss of one of its young people. And may Nolan's memory be a blessing, and truth, justice, and compassion can guide us all. All right, and next up is the Marshall Minute. I'm going to go first today, and I'm going to talk briefly today about rest. It is cliche to say that life moves pretty fast, but it does. You have busy work days that turn into busy evenings, and months are speeding by. You know, you're taking care of your family, you're hanging out with friends, and you're keeping up with your daily routine and responsibilities. But before you know it, you've forgotten time to take rest, and your body feels it, mentally and physically. And simply learning how to rest is a sure way that you may get a refresher. Have you heard of emotional rest, sensory rest, or social rest? I know I haven't. But it's more than simply taking regular naps. It's incorporating rest into your routine that may be difficult, but your body will thank you the next day and for years to come. So today I'll explain to you why rest is necessary for everyone. Plus, I'll talk about effective and not so effective ways to rest your body and how you will benefit from routine rest. So let's take a deep breath and begin. So first off, what are the types of rest? When we're talking about rest and learning how to achieve it, we usually think of physical and mental rest first. We're physically exhausted from the day-to-day errands or mentally exhausted from a hard day at work. And sometimes we're just dealing with both. But there are multiple types of rest, and tapping into each can help us feel properly rested. So the first type of rest is mental rest. This is necessary when we feel overwhelmed and are unable to focus or feel mentally exhausted. To achieve mental rest, we can take short breaks. We can journal our thoughts and disconnect from digital devices, especially before we go to bed. Next up is physical rest. This type of rest is required when we're physically exhausted or experiencing pain. It includes passive rest like sleeping and active rest like meditating or stretching or even professional care treatments. Then we come to social rest. We need social rest when interacting with others becomes draining. We manage our social energy by spending time alone or with people who uplift us and not overextending ourselves socially. And then we have emotional rest. This type of rest is needed when we feel emotionally overwhelmed. Suggestions include setting boundaries, taking time before responding to requests, and expressing our feelings in a safe environment. And then we have sensory rest. Sensory overload from constant sensory input like noise and lights can be addressed through digital detoxes, meditation, and sensory deprivation therapies. Then we have spiritual rest. This type of rest helps us reconnect with a sense of purpose and belonging, and engaging in community, volunteering, going to church, or working with mentors are all ways to achieve spiritual rest. And then the last thing is creative rest. You know, when we feel uninspired, we need to take a break and engage in creative rest. This involves immersing ourselves in nature and participating in purely fun activities and surrounding ourselves with other creative individuals. It's also important to disconnect from technology while you're doing this and allow your mind to wander freely. And by doing so, we can regain our creativity and feel more inspired. So I have a couple pre-criteria for getting rest. All right. And those are activities that promote rest are essential for maintaining a balanced lifestyle. And so supporting physical and mental well-being, supporting the different types of rest, we mention above play a simple role in reducing stress levels, improving sleep quality and restoring energy. To truly recharge, we need to try activities that meet specific criteria designed to relax the body, calm the mind, and elevate to de-elevate the stress. So we want to start by minimizing physical strain. One of the main characteristics of restful activities is low physical strain, which means that the activity should involve low levels of physical exertion to help the body relax naturally without causing any type of fatigue. So for instance, gentle activities like walking or yoga are usually recommended for this. Additionally, taking short breaks during the workday, this can help decrease stress hormones and improve your physical health. But, you also got to mentally relax. So in addition to physical relaxation, restful activities should also promote mental relaxation. They should encourage a state of mental calm or mindfulness. Engaging in activities like reading or journaling or listening to a podcast can reduce mental stress and clutter, leading to a more restful state. Creative rest, such as engaging in hobbies like painting, writing, and it can also help your mental well-being. And I think listening to the CWA Hour of Power might help in this physical relaxation. So Low stress, that's another critical feature of restful activities. And the primary goal is to reduce stress and anxiety levels. So activities like breathing exercises, aromatherapy, listening to a playlist can promote rest and help individuals relax. Social media and bright lights from electronic devices can affect sleep schedules. They can decrease the quality of rest. So it's very important to practice digital downtime and limit exposure to blue light before bedtime. And restful activities should be enjoyable and comfortable. Engaging in activities that you enjoy enhances the relaxation effect and helps you to improve the quality of rest. Additionally, effective restfulness often involves stepping away from daily responsibilities and work-related tasks. This disengagement allows the mind to recharge and can improve overall well-being. And so finally, make sure you pick a good environment. The environment that you engage in, restful activities can play a significant role. A quiet, comfortable, soothing environment enhances the effectiveness of promoting restful activities. And additionally, practicing self-care activities and getting enough sleep are essential components of a daily routine and will ensure a good night's sleep and rest time. And learning how to rest your mind and body may seem easy, but there's more to it than you think. You got to think of it like this. You're trying to slow down and clear your mind and be in the present moment. So with all the distractions and things that keep you busy, it's easy to be pulled toward the action. But the benefits of rest cannot be ignored. Rest will help you fight off, decision fatigue, which will help you make better decisions in life. And making decisions easier and with more confidence will allow you to be more productive, motivated, and more creative at work and at home. And learning how to rest is a skill your well-being will cherish in the future. It will show you the importance of caring for your mind and body and how resting time is priceless, because it's also a great form of self-compassion. And just remember this, it's very important to prioritize rest before you're exhausted. Stress will cause your body to release hormones that keep you on high alert. And rest is not just about being still or fixing your sleep schedule. It's about recovering from the daily burnout and taking the time to just be. Daydreaming, reflecting, and being mindful are all ways to recharge your mind and body. So always take time to take care of yourself and prioritize your well-being. So until next time, this has been the Marshall Minute, where living well is the greatest act of love. You're listening to KYOK Radio 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and press the Listen Live option. Tune in every Thursday, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Now, as you know, we often talk on this show about wages, working conditions, human rights, and building stronger communities. But right now, we're going to discuss something that touches every one of those issues, something that people may experience, but few people talk about. Think about this. We've never had more ways to communicate. We carry smartphones, send text messages in seconds, connect through social media, and can video chat with someone halfway around the world. Yet despite all of that technology, millions of people say they've never felt more alone. And loneliness isn't simply about just being by yourself. It's about feeling disconnected, unseen, or believing no one truly knows or understands you. It affects young people, it affects seniors, it affects workers, retirees, parents, caregivers, people living in big cities and in small towns. The consequences are real. Loneliness impacts our mental health, our physical health, our workplaces, our families, and ultimately the strength of our communities. And if we're serious about building power, we also have to be serious about building connection. So what happened? Why are we more connected than ever, yet more people feel isolated than ever? And what role can family, churches, unions, neighborhoods, and each of us play in changing that? Leading today's conversation is our very own Reginald Small, and joining him will be Timmia Wiley. I encourage you to stay with us because this discussion may not only change how you think about loneliness, it may inspire you to reconnect with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Reginald, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you, brother.
I appreciate you, David. Good morning, KYOK radio listeners. This is a subject today that this loneliness epidemic. I probably kind of had been thinking about this for some time, but I didn't know whether it's a real thing. But here recently, in the last few months, several people, several adults, middle-aged adults, were telling me that they are dealing with loneliness. And so when I started to look at that and I'm listening to him, I am thinking to myself that we're in the most connected society in history with smartphones, social media, text messaging, our beloved FaceTime, and yes, artificial intelligence. And yet so many people are saying that they've never felt more alone. So this just isn't a feeling anymore. It's become a national conversation. The U.S. Surgeon General has even described loneliness as a public health crisis because of its impact on both physical and mental health. So today we're going to talk about what loneliness really looks like, perhaps kind of evaluate a little bit why it's happening and what role in our communities. And yes, our unions can actually play in actually changing that. So, David, I'm going to bounce it back to you. So, David, when you hear the word loneliness epidemic, what comes to your mind, and what do you think this is? Why do you think this has become such a major issue?
Well, I think many people confuse being around people with actually being connected to people. You can work around hundreds, of coworkers and scroll through social media for hours and still not have one person that you feel comfortable with calling when, stuff happens or your life is starting to fall apart. I said earlier, we've gained technology, but in many ways, we've lost relationships. Many of us used to know our neighbors. Families, ate dinner together. Churches were full all throughout the week. Civic organizations, labor unions, bowling leagues, neighborhood clubs. People had somewhere to go and belong somewhere all throughout the week. And today, many people don't know the person living right next door. And that's to me is not a culture change. It's affecting how people's health and well-being is.
So when I first said, thank you, David, that's actually very powerful. And you mentioned several things: churches, civic organizations. I believe you said bowling leagues, all of that stuff. A lot of that stuff was commonplace some years ago, but I wonder, did COVID actually break some of that? Change some of that, because we went into 2 years. I might be forgetting that. It might have been several months. Well, I know it was over a year, but 2 years of separating ourselves from people. I mean, we didn't communicate with other people. We went into a Zoom technology. And if we're speaking about unions, union halls were empty because we could not come together physically. So I'm just wondering whether or not that actually had something to do with this loneliness, or did that just bring it out more to the forefront? So, Timmia, what do you think? Some people hear the word loneliness and think it's only about older adults. Is loneliness affecting everyone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been there myself. Young adults are reporting some of the highest levels of loneliness. Many people spend hours online but have very few meaningful conversations. I think we can all relate to that. We also have seniors living alone. Also, we don't forget about them. There's veterans, people with disabilities, single parents. That was me all day. Caregivers, people working 2 or 3 jobs, even people surrounded by family can feel emotionally isolated. Loneliness doesn't always mean you're physically alone, because you can be, like David said, around a bunch of people and still feel alone. Sometimes it means you don't feel seen, valued, or understood.
Yeah, I always find it a little odd when people say that they feel lonely and they live in a house with a family. So it made me think. I hosted Thanksgiving dinner, Timmy. I do that every year for probably about 30, 40 people, and probably 70% family, the rest of them friends. And I noticed that the younger people, cousins, can sit across the room from each other and they're quiet. They're not actually talking, but they're communicating with each other on a cell phone, but they have no interaction with other people. There's no conversation. There's no socialization. It feels like we've lost that somehow. And I think that's attributing to this feeling of loneliness, being in a house with 10 people and no one's talking to each other. I mean, when you think about that, what is that really about? That's actually kind of scary.
Well, and I think, you said it earlier in the segment where, we went through COVID and everybody was isolated. I don't think we know the long-term effects of that, on the psychology of a child that, got ripped from school and for 2 years had to sit at home in a room and do all their stuff via Zoom. And, did that, affect their growth and their social skills. So I think that those are all things that are valid that we need to look into and try to course correct, because I believe people need to be connected. I mean, we've seen when people get solitary confinement in jail is a punishment, and it's a punishment for a reason, because the human nature, desires connection. And without those connections, it can cause, a spiral effect of some mental health issues that you'll develop not being connected.
I agree with that, David, and and of course, I do live alone, not lonely, but I do live alone. And sometimes for a human connection, I'm old school. I think that I can go to a nice steakhouse bar, and you can sit, you can watch sports on the TV and pretend that I'm actually interested in sports. But you actually go there to actually think that you're going to look to your left or your right, and you're going to see someone else that you can actually just have a chit chat type conversation with. Once upon a time, that's what you did. Well, now I notice, and I'm going to put this to the test, and I encourage you to do the same. Go there and see what I'm talking about. You go to an establishment, you sit at the bar, and the only person who will perhaps make conversation or exchange conversation with you is the bartender, because everyone else there has their head down on their device. So they're missing the whole social possibility of actually being there and sitting around people. So you're talking about being in a room full of people and still there is no socialization. Now, of course, I'm not going to be defeated, because I'll talk to a signpost if it makes eye contact. So all you need to do is look up and I'm going to talk. But the point is, everything is changing, and I believe it's because of technology. I mean, after a while, I'm going to be sitting at a bar stool next to a robot, which that is a kind of a real thing, but that concerns me. So one thing, David, I've heard experts discuss is something called third places. Do you know anything about that? Can you explain what those are?
It's basically, everybody's first place is home. And, normally your second place is work. Your third place is where people naturally gather to build relationships. This may be your church, this may be your union hall, your community center, a library, a coffee shop, like you said, a bar at your local establishment, volunteer organizations, sports leagues. These places all help create trust and friendship. But the problem is we've lost many of these spaces. People stop gathering, so they stop knowing each other. And when that happens, that community gets weaker.
Yeah, because we know that it's for people when people used to be excited to come to your union meeting, because you're going to get to see your union siblings. You're going to get to share that collective power. It's a feeling that you have. And now it's like, oh, can we do it on Zoom? Can you just send me the notes? I mean, we're actually losing that in some ways.
We still have one saving grace. We have a Christmas party every year that I think a lot of people still look forward to. So we got to make sure we keep those traditions going so that people know that that's a thing. Because I do remember when the Union Hall had softball teams and, did stuff outside of just being, grievance filers. I mean, they actually did things together. They spent time together. They went on trips together. And so I think that's incumbent on all of us to try to, see that as an issue and try to, make inroads and bridge that gap again.
I guess you're right, David, because it's very difficult to do boots on the ground line dancing on Zoom, isn't it?
Right. It doesn't have the same effect. And with some of these filters, I can look really, really good.
So David, do you see a way that organized labor can actually help fight this loneliness epidemic?
Well, I think, this is something a lot of people don't even really think about. A union isn't just a contract. A union is a community. And, it's coworkers checking on each other. It's calling someone when they're sick. It's helping someone after a natural disaster. It's members standing beside each other during a strike. It's retirees staying connected years after leaving the workplace. Those relationships, in my opinion, matter. A paycheck supports your household, but that community that you build in unionism supports your life. Those are lifelong friendships.
And Timmia, I believe that you have experience working in a large call center. Do you see that Can you tell us a little bit how you can see loneliness affecting the workplace?
Absolutely. Working in a call center is a very lonely place because you're sitting there by yourself with your headset on. You don't have time to communicate with your coworkers. You might get 15 minutes of a break. You might get 30 minutes of a break. But there's still no time for camaraderie because everybody is in their silo on the phone speaking with a customer. So, and employees who feel isolated often experience more stress. The communication suffers across the board. You have morale where it declines. People are less likely to ask for help because they don't know who to ask for help from. Your burnout increases, and that's why healthy workplaces don't just focus on productivity. And we see that a lot. They want you to focus on numbers and not the person as a worker. And that when you focus on the worker, that helps foster relationships. And workers perform better when they know someone genuinely cares about them as people, not just employees.
I appreciate that, Timmy, and you're absolutely right. And I love it when you say healthy workplaces don't just focus on productivity. Healthy workplaces, we need to focus a little bit more on that kind of workplace, a healthy workplace. Thank God for unions. So let's connect this, Timmy, while we're with you. Let's connect this over to human rights. Some people listening may wonder, why are we discussing loneliness on a labor and human rights radio show? What do you think?
It's dignity, because dignity isn't just about wages. We fight for dignity on the job. It's about belonging somewhere. Every person deserves to know they matter. Back in the day, people used to have their proms at the union hall. Like the union hall was the center of work. That's where you had your potlucks, your baby showers, where because you work with people all day. You spend more time with them than you spend with your family. People deserve to know that they matter, and coming to the union hall was a place that people matter, because it wasn't just about labor. It wasn't just about your paycheck or your job. It was about the whole work or your whole person. So now we have people who have become isolated, and they become more vulnerable to depression, exploitation, especially misinformation and hopelessness, because if you don't have the connection with your shop steward or your local president or your secretary treasurer, you're asking for information. Normally, people get it off the internet from these groups that are on the internet, and they foster a whole lot of misinformation. And of course, then there's hopelessness. Healthy communities protect people. Strong relationships create resilient communities, and human rights begin by recognizing the humanity in one another. And that's what we have to go back to.
I 100% agree with all of that. On this show, we talk about many issues, and we discuss it. We give our opinions, our thoughts, and facts. But we like to leave always with some type of action, something that you can actually work with. So, David, I'm going to ask you to tell us, what can we start doing today to combat this loneliness?
Well, I can tell you, Reggie, it doesn't have to be complicated. Just pick up the phone and call someone you haven't talked to in a while. Go visit an elderly neighbor. Invite someone to lunch or to the local establishment. Attend your union meeting. You can always volunteer. Join a community organization, and go back to church if that's part of your life. Look up from that smartphone or computer, and reconnect, because sometimes changing someone's life begins with simply asking, how are you? How you doing? And really mean it.
And that is simple and yet so powerful. Thank you both, Timmia and David. And I'm going to close with this. Maybe America doesn't just need faster internet. Maybe we actually need slower, more meaningful conversations. Maybe we don't need more followers. Maybe we actually need more friends. Maybe, perhaps we don't need another app. Maybe we need to nurture our community. Whether it's your church, whether it's your neighborhood, or your beloved union, or your civic organization, it could actually be your family table. Whatever it is, connection is powerful, and no one should have to carry life's burdens alone. So let's continue building workplaces, communities, unions, where every person knows they belong. Because when people are connected, communities actually become stronger. And when communities become stronger, democracy becomes stronger. That's the kind of power we're working to build.
And I just want to jump in there and say, we don't need another app. Nobody needs another app. Put them phones down.
Yeah.
Exercise them vocal cords.
Timmia, I don't believe that the average person can put their phone down or leave it 10 feet away from them for 2 hours consecutively. I don't believe it. I think
I'm one of them people. You're right.
I think most people put it on their nightstand. It's the first thing they pick up in the mornings, and it's the last thing they put down at night. That's my belief. I'm trying not to be so guilty of that, but it's become such a part of us that it's hard not to do it.
You're right. You're right. And I'm guilty. I'm a guilty party, but we got to start somewhere.
I agree.
Because you never know. You might not be lonely, but somebody else might be lonely, and you need to
agree.
exercise.
And after this, Timmia, you can start with maybe calling me and just saying hi and giving me some little chit chat. You've been neglected. You've been neglecting me lately.
I'm gonna do better. I promise.
We're gonna start with ourselves. We're gonna start at home with this. So great conversation today, Reggie. If this discussion reminded you of someone, please don't wait. Reach out. One phone call, one visit, one conversation. It could all make a difference. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting the KYOK.org and press the Listen Live option. Tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on KYOKradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. All right. Well, last week, millions of Americans celebrated our nation's 250th birthday. We watched fireworks, attended parades, sang patriotic songs, and reflected on our country's journey. But now, 5 days later, we're asking a different question. Whose America did we celebrate? Not because we should be opposed celebrating America, because we absolutely should. But if America belongs to all of us, shouldn't a celebration reflect all of us? And so today, it's not about rewriting history. It's about asking whether we're telling the whole story. So I'm going to ask you both a question. Let me know what y'all think. If a 12-year-old watched every America 250 celebration last week, what would they believe America was built on?
That's a good question, David. I think they would say built on great leaders, definitely great presidents or great president, great wars, great inventions. And of course, all of those things deserve recognition. But I'm not sure they'd understand that America was also built by ordinary people whose names we'll never know.
I agree. But I also think we've become comfortable celebrating symbols instead of sacrifices. It's easy to celebrate fireworks. It's harder to celebrate the people who work 12-hour shifts, pick cotton, build railroads, organize unions, march for voters' rights, or clean office buildings after everyone else went home. I think that, and I hate to say this, I think that people would be a little bit jaded if they only took what they saw for the 250 celebration and thought that was America.
So you think maybe the question isn't what we celebrated, maybe it's what we left out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do believe it is what we left out because I firmly believe that 250 plus 5 is worth celebrating. I mean, it says something. And all of those things, the presidents, the wars, inventions, all of that stuff is worth celebrating. But it's the things that the underlying stuff that we didn't mention, that's not mentioned, or intentionally left out for whatever reason, it's worth celebrating as well.
Well, and then I want to ask this question as well, that makes some people uncomfortable. Can you criticize America and still love America?
I don't just think you can. I know that you can. I think that's exactly what every generation of Americans has done. I mean, I can certainly personally be critical of anything and still actually celebrate it because in my criticism, it is my hope that it actually, that it actually gets better. Sometimes after a radio show, David, as you well know, I might walk down the hall and I may criticize something that we talked about, but it's all in hopes of an act of actually improving upon it. It's no need in deceiving ourselves if something went wrong. You have to acknowledge that, and then you move forward, building something bigger and better.
You've even criticized it a minute before the show starts.
Listen, I criticize McDonald's, but I still eat there.
Making people's lives really rough. And
and David, I apologize in advance because I probably always do that because I probably don't prepare well enough in ahead. But I'm working on myself.
That was just a jab.
It was a jab, David. It was an honest jab, though. But you know what? In thinking about that, the founders of America 250 years ago, they criticized the king. Abolitionists criticized slavery. Women changed the denial of voting rights. Workers challenged dangerous workplaces. Dr. King challenged segregation. So every generation has challenged America because they believed America could become even better. So there's nothing wrong with the criticism. That's not an attack. It's in hopes of getting better.
Absolutely. And, unions, we're going to bring it back to unions because we are union.
That's right.
We fit into the same story. Collective bargaining is saying we believe this workplace can be better for everybody, more equal, more inclusive. And that's not anti-American. That's one of the most American things you can do.
So maybe patriotism isn't pretending everything has always been perfect. Maybe patriotism is refusing to give up on what America can become. So let me play devil's advocate right here. Some people listening right now may say, why can't we just enjoy the 4th of July? Why do we always have to bring race, labor, or inequality into everything?
I kind of understand that question, David. I won't say kind of. I understand it the way I heard it. But this nation was built on diversity. Yes, that is a word, and it's an okay word. I know it's become a bad word in some circles, but it is a word. Our nation was built on diversity. So if we're celebrating the people who built America, why would we intentionally leave some of those builders out? That's not politics. that's actually just history. And to me, when I look back and I'm thinking of celebrating 250, I can't, you got to take the whole package or none. I mean, you have to take the bitter with the sweet, and you come out and say, this is actually America. You don't get to pick and choose who you want to honor, or who you want to celebrate, or what aspect of that. And yes, I mean, I grew up in a time that you just celebrated 4th of July. Somebody cooked outside and you maybe shot, we call them firecrackers. You shot firecrackers and the kids just had a good time. There's nothing wrong with that simplicity when you're a child. But as a grown-up, an activist, a human rights activist, a person who cares about humanity, and I better understand what 250 years contain, I can't live beneath the shadows anymore. I have to deal with this in its whole totality, in its truth. And yes, I celebrate. I do celebrate the 250 years, but we have to celebrate all of it. And it's not just about celebrating, it's about acknowledging, about validating, about why are we trying to erase the truth? We don't need to erase it. We need to embrace it.
You're right. We're not asking for more history. We want the complete history, the whole story. That's it. We just want the whole story to be told. But like, who was that said the revolution shall not be televised? I feel like that's how a lot of the history has been treated. The revolutionary parts are not televised.
Well, and I think that, when we celebrate the whole of American history, we can see how great we can really become, how we can overcome, difference and obstacle and famines and, disasters and, all those things. Overcoming those things adds to that story and gives us inspiration. So I think we have to tell every part of the story for the story to really have a good meaning. I've got a challenge. All right. I want you to give me the people's Mount Rushmore. I mean, I don't want no presidents, no elected officials. Give me 4 Americans who belong on your Mount Rushmore.
Oh, David, I don't know. I don't know whether or not I can just pick one. We might need to use Mount Everest or something that we can put a whole bunch of people. But I'm going to start off, and I would put Harriet Tubman on mine for sure. And it's not because she held office. It's because she changed lives. While people were arguing about what she couldn't do, she hadn't already left the room and was on her walk to go get some people to show you what she did. So, I mean, it was about action. And that's what I believe. So while you're planning and you're trying to pass this and that, somebody is actually out doing the work. I'm also going to say, I don't know, it's just so many. Bayard Rustin, Dolores Herder. I mean, it's so many. I could just keep going. And I mean, oh gosh, I mean, Coretta Scott King, because she stayed the course. It wasn't about her. It was about a legacy, because the legacy needed to be put there so that because we built so many things based upon the legacy. Without Coretta, there would be no King holiday. I don't even think we wouldn't have been able to build upon even a Black History Month in a Juneteenth. It was Coretta. She stayed the course. She denied herself. That is my view of her. So she would go up there as well. I'm telling you, it ain't enough room.
It's not enough room, because my list would consist of Malcolm X, W.E.B. Du Bois, the Pullman porter, Memphis sanitation workers, a teacher, a nurse, because America doesn't run without them.
Well, and I'm going to choose just a steel worker, a coal miner, a clerk, a flight attendant, a communication worker,
I'm a communication worker, David.
Right. I mean, folks working in mailrooms and warehouses. I mean, because every day, they quietly keep this country moving, So I got to put those everyday people in there. The mailman, everybody that keeps us afloat. Those folks need to be on that Mount Rushmore. So next, I have a question that every listener should try to answer. I'm going to leave everyone with this question. When America celebrates its 251st birthday, whose story are you going to make sure gets told? Is it going to be your parents, your grandparents, your church, the union member who you fought for better wages for, the teacher who changed your life, a veteran, a neighbor who marched for civil rights? History isn't only written in Washington. It's written around dinner tables. It's written in neighborhoods, churches, union halls, and in family reunions. And I've realized something this week. America wasn't built because everyone agreed. America was built because generation after generation refused to stop believing that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. That includes farmers. That includes teachers. That includes immigrants, indigenous people, Black Americans, women, veterans, people with disabilities, LGBTQIA plus Americans, workers, union members, faith leaders, entrepreneurs, first responders, parents, grandparents, millions of ordinary people whose names never appear in history books. 5 days after celebrating America's 250th birthday, maybe the most patriotic thing we can do is to make sure that next year's celebration tells an even fuller story. Because the more complete our history becomes, the stronger our future can be. And this isn't about taking anyone out of America's story. It's about making sure no one is left out. And I'll end this segment with the question for you. If your family had one page in America's history book, what would it say? You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting the kyok.org and press the Listen Live option. Tune in live every Thursday, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on KYOK Radio, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Well, next up.
Well, wait a minute, David. I mean, there's a subject here that I think we need to just jump into. This waste, fraud, and abuse. Let's do that. Let's go there.
Okay. Well, let's get to waste, fraud. You want to start it off?
Oh, yeah. Because this topic was, at one point, everything was about waste, fraud, and abuse. So one of the biggest promises we heard throughout 25 was that government would eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. The supporters said taxpayers would save billions. Critics warned essential services and workers would pay the price. Now that we've had time to look back, I just want to throw this out here. Let's ask the question. Did we actually eliminate waste, fraud, or abuse? Or did we simply cut programs? And perhaps the biggest question of all, has the average American worker seen any benefit in their paycheck, their health care, their retirement, their grocery store bill, or their daily life? So, Timmia, I know you've been watching this closely, as all Americans have. Before I ask you that, Timmia, let me go back and add something else. And also remember that about 350,000 workers were impacted with this waste, fraud, and abuse search or elimination. So, Timmia, I know you've been watching this, as all Americans have, and most people have. Some of them have forgotten about it because it's not talked about as much. What are you saying?
What am I saying? I'm saying that we are in a mess. We got a mess on our hands. And I don't know what it's going to take to fix it. And I probably wasn't the answer you were looking for, but we do have a mess on our hands.
So do you think everyone agrees that government should eliminate fraud? I think we all agree with that. Nobody wants taxpayers' dollars wasted. So I want to be very clear. But here's the real question. If we saved all this money, why are groceries still expensive? Why is housing still unaffordable? And why are so many families working two jobs? And the other part of that is, can they even get two jobs? Why are they having to work two jobs? And why do people still feel financially squeezed? So what was the payoff there? So if working people don't feel the benefit, then the natural ask, where did the savings go? So let's define something, because people often lump three very different things together: waste, fraud, and abuse. They're not the same.
Well, and you're exactly right. Fraud is illegal. That's a crime. Waste may be simply, inefficiently spending something. Abuse can be exploiting loopholes or missing programs without necessarily breaking the law. But those are different problems that require different solutions. And so, even though it rolls off the tongue, waste, fraud, and abuse, but what is that really? Because those are three different things.
So did the government actually recover large amounts of stolen money, or did it mostly reduce spending through layoffs? I keep thinking about 350,000 government workers, contract cancellations, and program cuts.
It was, and that's where working families become a part of the conversation. That it was more than 350,000, if I'm correct, if I'm thinking correctly, because that was like the number for Black women, was the 300,000. But in any job losses is terrible. But when agencies lose employees, customer service slows down, claims take longer, inspections happen less often, and communities lose jobs. Sometimes cutting spending also means cutting services people depend on.
But supporters to this waste, fraud, and abuse conversation argue that that's exactly what had to happen. They'll say government has become too large, too much duplication, too much bureaucracy, too much spending. So, David, how do we fairly evaluate that argument?
Well, I think it starts with you have to ask measurable questions, not opinions, but actual measurable questions. Did the deficit improve? Did taxpayers save money? Did services improve?
Nope.
Did the economy become stronger? Did working families become financially better off? Those outcomes can all be charted and proved, and then people can judge from there.
So, Timmia, why don't we bring unions into this conversation, since this is a union labor radio show?
Well, this is where labor has to pay attention. Government workers are workers. Contractors are workers. Airport employees, they are workers. Healthcare, you've got inspectors, veterans employees, postal workers. Many of these jobs support middle-class families. Unions aren't opposed to accountability, but they want accountability to be based on facts, not politics. And they want change made in ways that don't necessarily harm workers or the public.
So here's today's takeaway, because we could go so far into this, and I really wanted to bring it up more in a way of actually throwing out the thought, how did we benefit from this, or was it successful or not? But here's today's takeaway. Every taxpayer should want government to eliminate real fraud. Every taxpayer should want government to eliminate real waste. Put an emphasis on real. Every taxpayer should want efficiency. But after all the headlines, I've been going back to this simple question: did your life improve? Did your paycheck did your paycheck go further? And did your health care improve? Did your community become stronger? Those are questions every American, regardless of political party, should ask.
And that's a great place to close, because the government exists to serve the people. And whether you believe too much was cut or not enough was cut, the real measure isn't at the press conference. It's whether working families experience better lives. And that's the conversation that we need to continue having. Next up, I'm going to go into the Union Buster of the Week with Timmia Wiley.
This week's Union Buster of the Week is just a little bit different, David. Instead of highlighting just one employer, we're recognizing an outstanding piece of labor journalism from the Teamsters Just Cause publication. They recently highlighted what they call some of the worst employees when it comes to workers' rights. Whether you're a Teamster, a CWA member, or belong to another union entirely, one thing remains true. When one worker attacks workers, every worker should pay attention. Union busting doesn't always look like firing union employees or union leaders. Sometimes it looks like delaying contract negotiations, hiring expensive anti-union consultants, holding mandatory and anti-union meetings, retaliating against employees who speak up, creating fear instead of partnership, refusing to bargain in good faith, treating workers as disposable while executives reward themselves. Those tactics don't just hurt one workplace, they weaken the labor movement for everybody. Here on CWA Hour of Power, we believe in giving credit where it is due. And the Teamsters deserve recognition for shining a light on employers who continue to resist workers exercising their legal rights. Their reporting reminds us that exposing union busting is a part of protecting democracy in the workplace. The lesson is this: union busting survives in darkness. Accountability begins with exposure. Companies need to understand that respecting workers isn't optional. That's why solidarity matters, because today it may be the Teamsters, tomorrow it could be CWA, the next day it could be your job. And with that, you got to remember there's teachers, nurses, flight attendants, public employees, or any group of working people trying to earn a fair living could be affected by this. So this week's Union Buster of the Week reminds us that every attack on collective bargaining is an attack on working families. So congratulations are due to the Teamsters for continuing to document those practices and keeping workers informed. Because being an informed worker is a powerful worker. Back to you.
All right.
David.
Thank you, Timmia. The Communication Workers of America invite you to the 2026 National Human Rights Conference happening August 16th through the 19th in Atlanta, Georgia. Come join union leaders and activists from across the country as we come together to build power, advance justice, and fight for workers' rights. This year's conference will be held at the beautiful Westin Peachtree Plaza, located in the heart of downtown Atlanta. To register, please visit cwahumanrights.com. Don't miss this opportunity to learn, organize for a stronger, more just future. We'll see you in Atlanta. And as I close today's show, remember this: the future isn't decided by the loudest voices. It's decided by people who show up. So show up for your family, show up for your community, show up for your union, and show up for democracy. Because democracy is not a spectator sport, but neither is justice. So stay informed, stay engaged, and stay involved. And remember, our rights, our voices, our community, our power. Because at the end of the day, rights that aren't exercised will be lost, and voices that aren't used will be ignored. And know that power that isn't organized will be taken away. So on behalf of us, of everyone here at CWA Hour of Power, thanks for listening. For Reginald Small, Timmia Wiley, and the entire CWA family, I'm David Marshall. Please make sure to meet us back here next Thursday, same time, same place, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, right here on KYOK Radio, 1140 a.m. and the all-new 106.5 FM. Or listen to us live on kyokradio.org and press the Listen Live option. That's it for now, so take care of yourself and take care of each other.